Hi, it's Harriet. I'm stopping by to do a live. I've been saying that I wanted to. This will be posted in the group, but I plan on posting it also on my YouTube channel so that the broader audience can see this. But the broader audience know that this was made for positive parenting with food allergies, which is a Facebook group. So there's so many things I want to talk about, but I really did want to do a video to start with about back to school. Here in New York, we are still in camp season, so many of us are not thinking about back to school yet. And that's okay, but I've been getting a lot of requests about back to school and things like that, and we're starting to see the uptake in food allergy groups about concerns about schools and starting school and things like that. So I wanted to stop by and give some quick tips and some information about starting school and going back to school with food allergies. So, food allergies can mean many things these days. It's not just a nut issue. Unfortunately, most schools only know that as their point of reference for children with food allergies, and that's what they assume. And many times parents are told, oh, don't worry, we're nut free, or we have a nut table, or we have an allergy table, which really turns out to be just a nut allergy table. So what I want to talk about is navigating schools with multiple food allergies, and also what best ways you can protect yourself in school. So my kids are older. They're 16 and 12. We did not really have many protections. They actually started in the New York City public school system, which really had none. I removed my younger child from the allergy table because it became evident that there was no point for them to be at the allergy table, because at the allergy table, all their allergens were present. So let's talk about school and what's important and things like that. So I can't stress this enough. The most important thing about starting school with food allergies is communication. Communication with the teacher is vital, because that is going to be the person who spends the most time with your child. And it's not just about this. It's not about my kid can't have this. It's about it's also about alerting your teacher about the signs and symptoms that your child exhibits when they're having a reaction. So that way a teacher can understand if a child is coughing frequently, or if a child says their stomach hurts, that these are not just random signs that this could flag the child to be having a reaction. But also, if there's certain patterns in how they react, it's important that a parent communicate how a child reacts and any past histories to the teacher. It's important that the principal and the school nurse also be on board. Most school districts, not all, have a policy that if a child is identified with a food allergy or history of anaphylaxis, they then have to come up with a health care plan, an emergency care plan. So that is something that tends to be in place when people also don't get 504s. Not everybody gets 504s, which I'll talk about in a minute. The easy ways to keep your kids safe in school are to provide their own food. Unfortunately, school lunch programs most of the time, milk is required by USDA law. My school district, which I'm happy about, still serves peanut butter, but what happens is that they're in the cups or they sell the Uncrustables so that the risk of cross-contamination is decreased. They do not do this for the youngest kids, which are the kids in pre-K. But kindergarten and up, they do. It's important to note that if you have a sesame allergy or a mustard allergy, the kitchen staff and the nutrition program may not be versed enough in reading labels to understand that those things do not have to be declared. The safest way to keep your kid protected in school is to send them with their own food. Yes, if the school receives USDA funding, they are obligated to provide lunch for your child, but at what cost? My kids have never had school lunch because not only is there an issue with what the ingredients are, but there's also an issue of cross-contamination. I don't know if you've ever been on a school lunch line, but even when there are adults doing the tongs, there's a really big risk. That's a little bit different in camp because I oversee things, or I did, but I still oversee them. And so the key is take some personal responsibility. So communicate. Stress what you need, not what you necessarily want, but what you absolutely need. So if you need to have wipes in the classroom, that is a need. If you need to have a place to store safe snacks, that is a need. If another important thing is if you have a classroom that does events and does parties, there needs to be a time frame that you get notice. Nothing would drive me crazier than finding out 24 hours beforehand that I have to supply a cupcake the next day for my son. So either keep snacks that are safe in the classroom, somewhere that they can be stored, or in addition, make sure a part of this communication piece that you get at least 48 hours notice of any events that would require food. It is really, really important, I'm going back to the communication, that you have this partnership with your school. You're not at odds with your school district or your school. Everyone wants your child to be safe. Understand that a school district or a school can have hundreds of kids, and a lot of those kids also have food allergies. And so the school nurse is balancing a lot of that in the sense that they may have 200 kids with food allergies if it's a large school, and that every kid has their own need. It's important that you discuss with your school how their medication accessibility is. Where is your child from the school nurse's office? Where is your child from where the epi is? Quite honestly, I do recommend that, a set of epis and an inhaler is kept in the classroom and travels with the child everywhere. My own kids started carrying about third grade, but if I did it again, I would do it much earlier. So that's something to really, hi Mom. That is something that's really important to ask is, where are the meds kept? And if your school tells you that they're kept under lock and key, that is a problem. You don't want asthma inhalers or EpiPens that are locked up and only the nurse can get. What happens if the nurse is not in the building? What happens if the nurse is in a meeting? Who has access to these EpiPens and inhalers? It should be somewhere that is quick and relatively accessible by an adult, but not by a child. But it is really important that if it's on the same floor as your child, if it can't be in the same classroom, and then of course, always having a backup in the nurse's office as well. So far we talked about communication, which is the key, which I cannot stress more than enough, because see the teacher as your partner. They are not out to hurt your kids. They don't want to have a kid having an anaphylactic reaction or something else in their classroom, but understand that there are certain things that are just not attainable. The other thing is that, yes, we all want inclusiveness and we want that kind of stuff. I talked about the birthday parties. Keep safe snack in your classroom. in the classroom if you have to, or ask for the advance notice of food coming in, which is key. Educate about the importance of hand washing. Hand washing is vital. It's probably the most important step. So I can tell you that it is a pain in the butt to get 25, 30 kids to wash their hands. So it is really hard. And that's in a classroom that has a sink. If they do not have a sink, talk to your school, talk to your classroom about, on the school supplies, about getting wet ones in the classroom. At the very, very least, get your child to always wash their hands coming back. Sometimes it's just not practical to get a whole classroom to wash their hands, although it would be great. And another way to push this is not from a food allergy perspective, but push this through cold and flu season perspective. It protects the kids from getting sick the more they wash their hands with soap and water. So it's not just a food allergy issue. It is a hygiene issue for health. As far as nut bans, we all know where I stand on that, but I want to do a quick piece on that. If classrooms have to put in a ban, then it needs to be representative of every single food allergy that's in that classroom. That's number one. Number two, bans are incredibly hard to enforce. Actually, they're never enforceable, just so you know. Things do come in, even if it doesn't come in from the classroom. You cannot control what the janitor eats. You can't control what the teacher eats. You can't control what people are bringing in. So to think that nuts will never be around is a falsehood. You cannot just say we're not going to have nuts and then leave the other kids with allergies exposed to their allergens, because it's just not fair. So, again, there are three things that you can stress most important for your school. Education. Get them to know what the signs and symptoms of anaphylaxis is. Number two, hygiene. Washing hands and wiping down surfaces after eating. And number three, access to medication. These are the three key points in keeping kids safe. The additional part of that is the communication about your action plan with the school nurse and the teacher. The teacher should always be clued in, because that is the person, like I said, who's spending the most time with your child. If there is anything up with your child, you should definitely call the nurse and the teacher and let them know if the child is wheezing, if the child had a rough night, if the child was exposed to an allergen. The more that people are kept in the loop, the better they can care for your child. As far as 504s are concerned, not many doctors give them, believe it or not. There is a real push for them now, but I can tell you that there's not as strong push for it. Many times, food allergies and asthma can be managed in the school environment with an individualized healthcare plan and with good communication. If you want a 504, that is something that has to be written up by the doctor and then presented to the 504 committee, and then there is a decision that gets made of what reasonable accommodations they can make. And I'm telling you, I have seen some really ridiculous ones. I don't know if people remember where there was one where people wanted to have a dog come in and sniff the classroom, or that every child had to brush their teeth when they came into the classroom. I've seen ones where the kids have to wash their hands when they come into the classroom. I'm not so keen on that one yet. But again, ask for only what you really need, not what you want in an ideal world, because it gets too overwhelming, and again, it can put other people with other medical conditions, it can interfere with their lifestyle as well. So if there's any questions, please let me know. As you know, most of you know, I do work in a classroom during the school year most of the time. So my brain is kind of focused not only as the teacher, but as a parent. And so I look at things kind of like both ends of the spectrum. And I do understand that teachers have so many things going on. And so many kids have different kinds of needs. So that's why it's important to have the good communication with your teacher. Email them before school starts. Ask for a meeting. Ask to send them information. But just start off, not that they're against you, but they're going to be a partner with you, okay? So with that, I'm going to let you go. Send me some questions. I might pop out to address some other things in a few minutes. So stand by.